Hello, everyone. I've got this video here for you to watch about how to make easy gesso. So this should help you with your practice, and it's a great way if you don't have time to make the natural gesso, and if you're worried about getting icon boards that are already gessoed, which can be expensive at times. This is a big help. So here you go. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, here you go. So for painting egg tempera, we have to always paint on a hard, unbending surface. Otherwise, the paint could crack. And we always need to use natural gesso because we need a porous surface. If it's the acrylic gesso, the egg tempera will not adhere and sink into the surface. And that would just be frustrating as for the iconographer as well as not give you good results. So I do have an article on my website, newchristianicons.com. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see it. It's how to gesso icon boards. And that's with the natural gesso. So if you want to go that route, I recommend it. It is time consuming, but it can be really worth it if you do several boards at once. But an alternative is this Easy Gesso product that's created by naturalpigments.com. And if you follow the directions exactly and then use at least 3 coats, you could use more coats, let them dry in between, and then lightly sand them. Then it can be really a good surface to paint on. You could do that on watercolor paper or also boards, birch panels that you can get from Trekell, TREKELL.com. They have Baltic birch panels very inexpensively. So to begin mixing the easy gesso that you can get from naturalpigments.com, they have the directions really clearly labeled on the back. And so the directions here call for equal amounts of easy gesso by volume with warm water. So I have here some warm water, and I have here a recycled, plastic container. So, and what I do is I label it so I can keep track, like easy gesso. So this gesso was made with easy gesso, and it was made in November. So otherwise, I have all these containers and can't remember what's in them. So here I have measured half a cup of warm water, and I'm putting it in the container. And now I'm going to measure half a cup of the easy gesso. If you remember the old days when we used to use cake mixes, it's very much like a cake mix. That's still not quite enough. Let's see. And it's wonderful. I mean, it really saves so much time, and it seems to be as good as doing it the long way. So, okay, I think that's about half a cup. So I'm going to stir it into the warm water. I'm going to do a little bit at a time. It's really important that you use warm water because the glue is activated by heat. You don't want it to be too hot, the water, but just warm. If it's too hot, like say if it was boiling water, it could destroy the elasticity of the glue. So you still have to be careful, but it's a lot easier than working with the rabbit skin glue method and chalk and marble dust, which I still do, from time to time. If I have a huge um, board or a whole lot of them to do, I will mix up the traditional gesso. But this is for studio work. This is for, something that I'm going to use for my practice. And you stir it up, and then the directions say to let it sit for at least 2 hours. And that's really important too, because we're talking about creating a molecular bond between the glue molecules and the chalk. So it's easy. And we just set it aside now, put your timer on. You can do a bit longer than 2 hours. But it's at least. And once you get it to letting it sit for 2 hours, you can see how right now it's pretty watery. It's a bit like the consistency of milk. But when you'll see later, after it has sat for a couple of hours, it will become like a soft gel. So we will come back after 2 hours or so and take a look again. So to begin, okay, so here we have the warm water, and here's the easy gesso that we mixed up earlier. See how most of it is solid in there? It's like a solid gel. So we're going to put this in the warm water and give it a minute or two to soften up. See how it goes. Remember how before it was like milk, but it's starting to soften up now. So I usually say, 3 coats is good. The more coats you put on, obviously the more absorbent the gesso will be. And you can gesso watercolor paper, you can gesso boards, you can gesso ampersand boards, clay boards, aqua boards, any of those surfaces to use for egg tempera. It's much better to use this absorbent gesso. Okay, I'm going to take it out of the warm water now. And so I have here a board that I've already got some coats of the gesso on there. So I like to put quite a few coats on mine. And I have, this is just a brush that you get like from Home Depot or Lowe's. Just an old brush, really, an old paintbrush. Because gesso is pretty tough on brushes. So you don't want to use your really good brushes in it. And then we just coat it. See how nice and thin it is now. We just coat the surface with it. And we let it dry. It'll dry pretty quickly in about, 10 minutes or so. And try to clean up the sides. It makes it easier later when you have to sand the sides. And that's it. So you do let this dry and then do it at least 2 more times. And then you're ready to paint. It's really that simple. If you have any questions, you can always email me and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Okay, happy gessoing. So here's a small block that I've gessoed with the Easy Gesso, and I've done the edges as well. So for the edges, I'm going to sand using something that's somewhat coarse. This is 220, and this is just an ordinary sanding block that you can get from Home Depot. So for the edges, I'm just kind of wrapping around a piece of the sandpaper. This is the rough part, the rough sandpaper. Make sure the edges are nice and smooth. It doesn't take really a lot. Please go over it a little bit. But this way, if you gesso the edges like this and smooth them off, you have choices when you're ready to finish your icon. You could paint these edges. You could use a tempera. You could use acrylic. You could even gold leaf them if you wanted to. So yeah, it doesn't take very much really to go around and do them. So those are the edges. And then for the actual surface, I'm going to use a finer sandpaper. So for this one, I'm going to use a 400. You could use a 300 or a 350. And again, just wrapping it around. So I'm sorry, I think the table might move while I'm sanding, but even that's almost enough, just that little bit. It's put the rough edge on. And to give yourself a lovely smooth surface to work on. So I'm going to keep going and do more. But you could, if you wanted to remove all of these sort of brush strokes, you could use the 220 and do a little sanding first. And then use the 400 to make it nice and smooth. It's really up to you what kind of surface you want to work on. But just the light sanding is really enough. It's beautiful. I mean, you can feel it. It's lovely. So now you can paint with it. Doesn't take really a lot. Make it a nice, beautiful surface. So, yeah, so that's what you do is you sand the edges if they need it with a rougher, like a 220 or even a 300 would work. And then the surface, you could use a 300 weight sandpaper, or in my case, I used a 400, so it's very fine. And you get the sandpaper at the hardware store, Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. And then you're ready to paint. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that and I hope it helps you.